Today, we're unpacking a highly viral, deeply provocative piece of source material that's literally been making waves all over the internet. We are simply here to lay out the architecture of this argument, exploring exactly what the creator is claiming without endorsing or condemning any of it. We're going to break down the logic, the historical heavyweights it draws upon, and the specific behavioral changes it prescribes.
So what happens when 19th century pessimism crashes head-on into ancient Roman Stoicism? Well, that question perfectly captures the fascinating and honestly kind of jarring case study we're looking at today. The source material takes the famously gloomy, cynical perspectives of a 19th century thinker and mashes them right into the disciplined, unemotional lens of ancient Stoicism. It's an incredibly unexpected combination, like mixing oil and water, really, but the creator attempts to use this friction to build a completely new toolkit for navigating modern relationships.
To keep things moving, here is our roadmap for today. First, we'll look at the core philosophy. Second, the 4 provocative truths. And third, reclaiming your control. Let's get into it.
Starting off with Section 1, the core philosophy. This is where Schopenhauer meets the Stoics.
The source grounds its whole cynical view of human nature in the brutal honesty of Arthur Schopenhauer. Now, Schopenhauer definitely did not sugarcoat his worldview. He argued that desire, and especially sexual desire, is the literal root of all human suffering. In this framework, he's presented as someone who believed women are masters of illusion, arguing that their emotional intelligence evolved strictly for survival and control, rather than for objective truth.
Now, to counter Schopenhauer's pretty bleak outlook, the source brings in Stoicism. And Stoicism is used here as the ultimate defense mechanism. It's a framework designed to stop the chase for fleeting pleasures and replace impulsive behavior with intense reason and total detachment. Think of it as the defensive shield to Schopenhauer's cynical sword.
To really anchor this idea, the creator drops this amazing quote from Marcus Aurelius. Think about what this actually means for you. If you strip away the veil of illusion and just change your internal estimate of a situation, you completely eliminate your external distress. The argument here is that you begin to understand where your real power lies, and it's entirely within your own perception.
Moving right along to Section 2, 4 provocative truths. These are the core arguments.
The source actually structures its claims into 4 specific truths. It starts by juxtaposing Schopenhauer's raw claim with a highly disciplined Stoic reaction. Schopenhauer believed women are more emotionally driven as a survival mechanism, but the prescribed Stoic response? It isn't to get angry, not at all. The Stoic man simply holds his frame, stays completely still, observes, and absolutely refuses to match those emotions.
To back up this behavioral response, the source leans on a classic quote from Epictetus, all about emotional control. The creator uses this to remind us that emotions themselves are neither good nor bad. The true test of self-mastery, at least according to this framework, is the refusal to let someone else's emotional state dictate your own reaction.
For the second truth, we see a huge contrast. The source pits Schopenhauer's cynical view of beauty as a tactical trap against the Stoic focus on building eternal character. Schopenhauer believed physical beauty was essentially a biological weapon designed to bind men. To combat this, the Stoic response requires a major mental shift, recognizing that physical attraction is temporary, while internal virtues like character, peace, and purpose are permanent. The explainer reinforces this whole idea of fading beauty by bringing Marcus Aurelius back into the mix. It's a vivid reminder of the inevitable passage of time. The source material argues that because time eventually covers all physical beauty, seriously, no matter what we see on modern social media, anchoring your life or your decisions to it is fundamentally irrational.
Now, the third truth frames relationship dynamics as this intense battle for validation. The source outlines Schopenhauer's view that manipulation happens by creating a false sense of scarcity to make a man chase. So what's the Stoic counter-strategy? Total detachment. By refusing to chase and living by the strict law to never explain and never complain, the man allegedly reclaims his inherent value.
And that brings us to the 4th and final truth. This one takes Schopenhauer's fierce critique of marriage and softens it just a bit with the Stoic demand for rational decision-making. Look, Schopenhauer viewed marriage merely as a tool of servitude, but the Stoic counterpoint doesn't declare marriage outright evil. Instead, it argues that unconscious decisions driven by loneliness or lust are the real trap, demanding that any union be evaluated with pure, unclouded reason.
To drive this home, the source leverages Seneca, pointing out that freedom isn't necessarily just avoiding marriage completely, but rather entering into it with a perfectly clear soul. True bravery, in the context of this framework, is possessing the mental clarity to make choices completely free from societal pressure or basic biological impulses.
All right, on to Section 3, reclaiming your control. Here are 3 directives for the modern man.
So, how does the source translate all this dense historical philosophy into everyday, modern action? Well, it urges its audience to reclaim control over 3 specific pillars of daily life: attention, emotional response, and mission. Let's break down exactly what the creator advises for each of these critical steps.
The first directive is a big one. It warns that giving your focus away too easily basically diminishes your value. In an age of endless notifications, the source explicitly argues that people don't necessarily need a man's money, they need his focus. Therefore, the prescribed strategy is to guard your mind like a fortress, treating your attention as your absolute most valuable modern asset.
Building on those Stoic principles we talked about, the second step demands that men stop overreacting or pleading when they hit a bump in a relationship. The source paints a very specific, relatable scenario. Instead of sending 10 desperate text messages when faced with silence, you send 0. By completely eliminating the urge to chase, you stop giving your power away and you just let your silence do the heavy lifting.
Finally, the third directive reframes a man's entire life mission. It explicitly states that you are not born to be an emotional support system, but a creator. The source instructs that if you ever face disrespect or mind games, you have to walk away, not out of anger, but from a position of absolute power. The argument is pretty simple here. Absolutely nothing is more intimidating than a person who can no longer be influenced.
We're going to wrap up our explainer with this final, highly provocative question pulled straight from the source material. It perfectly captures the ultimate appeal of this entire framework: total, unshakable self-mastery. By combining Schopenhauer's brutal view of illusions with Stoic self-control, the creator promises a massive paradigm shift. Regardless of where you personally stand on these views, the architecture of the argument is crystal clear. True power, according to this philosophy, is achieved the very moment you completely master yourself. Thanks so much for joining us to unpack this today.